We're live on YouTube and on LinkedIn and on Facebook and also on Instagram. So let me see if we are ready to go here. Let me make sure everything's working. Give me 1 second, guys. Just to make sure that we're actually live here. Why is this not working? Sorry about that. Instagram, live. I don't get it. Okay. I guess it's not working on my iPad. Give me 1 second. Sorry, guys. Okay. All right. Now we're live on Instagram. Okay. And let me just confirm that we are actually live also on YouTube. Yep. And we are live on LinkedIn. All right, cool. So, guys, welcome. And as usual, we're back for our monthly live Q&A, which, it's early March now. For those of you that are recruiting for summer 2024, the recruiting is obviously well underway. Things are happening even earlier this year than they happened last year, which is maybe a surprise to a lot of you guys, but not really a surprise to us because we see that pretty much happen every single year, right? So what we want to do today is just, as usual, try to get through as many questions as we can in the next hour. And so any questions that you guys have about the investment banking recruiting process, about what you should be doing, about your specific situation. Those of you, if you want to learn a little bit more about kind of our program and what we could potentially do to help you, whatever it may be, feel free to drop your questions down below in the comments, whether you are on Instagram or on YouTube or on LinkedIn. Drop your questions in the comments. Let's build up kind of a queue of questions right now, so that we can start going through them. And while you guys are doing that, for those of you who are new, just to give you guys kind of like a quick intro on like what Wall Street Mastermind is, who I am. My name is Sam Shaw. By the way, I'm the founder of Wall Street Mastermind. We are one of the only companies of our kind that basically provides in-depth, hands-on, one-on-one coaching, along with a really super freaking awesome community of students who and alumni who either have already gotten into banking or are currently trying to break into banking. And everybody's working together to basically secure a job either in banking or sometimes, private equity. Some people go to hedge funds, but basically Wall Street jobs, high finance jobs, right? Our program has been super successful and effective. So much so that we are one of the only companies, actually the only company out there, I believe, to offer a money back guarantee, which means like if you work with us to try to break into investment banking and you don't get a job, we give you a full refund. And, very exciting new thing that we're doing now is, a lot of times, like a lot of students want to work with us, but they just can't afford it because, you guys are still college students and whatnot. We are launching a new thing, for those of you that haven't heard, where you can actually come in and work with us for very, very low upfront fee, like very small amount, just so we know you have at least a little bit of skin in the game. But we structure the majority of the payments as a future income share that you would only pay after we get you a job in investment banking. Meaning, if we don't get you into investment banking, you don't have to pay anything. And you even if we get you into investment banking, you don't have to start paying until you start getting paid in banking. So you can pay out of your future paychecks. So even if you don't have money right now, like basically our goal is to just democratize access to the quality of help that we're providing, which up to this point has been out of reach for a lot of people. But we want to make it so that, hey, anyone who's committed enough, anyone who's hardworking enough and is like fully dedicated to wanting to break into investment banking, we want them to be able to have access to basically pretty much the best competitive advantage you could possibly have when it comes to investment banking recruiting, right? That's been proven out by our results. We've gotten some people into banking that most people thought had no shot getting into banking, and we've collectively gotten, our clients into every single bulge bracket elite boutique bank on Wall Street, right? Even some of the top buy-side firms as well, like Blackstone, like KKR, like Insight Partners, like, a lot of the top firms out there, Excel, on the VC side. And so anyway, that's a little bit about us, but I don't want to spend, all the time here talking about our program. I'm just kind of, giving you guys a high level overview of who we are and what we do so that you know who you're listening to and why you should even listen to me in the first place. But I want to spend most of the time today answering your questions about the recruiting process, whether it's about summer 2024 recruiting or, anything else related to IB recruiting is fair game. Okay, so let's dive into it. By the way, if you're watching this on YouTube or on LinkedIn, there is a QR code in the upper left corner, which if you scan that, it'll take you to our free course. And actually just, about 7 hours worth of free content and training that we've put together for you in a bundle that will help you with your recruiting process. So if you're interested in that, make sure to go scan the QR code and get your hands on that. If you want to speak to someone like an upperclassman or someone who's already successfully gone through the recruiting process, with our help, you can book a call with one of our alumni, free virtual coffee chat by going to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply, which is in the bottom left corner. Again, if you're on YouTube or LinkedIn, on Instagram, unfortunately, I don't have the ability to put these things on screen. So, but if you want to book a call, you want to talk to someone just to get some free advice, free recruiting advice, how they got to where they are, how they get into the bulge bracket or elite boutique bank that they got into, or you want to ask them about your specific situation, or you want to ask them about our program, whatever it is, it's just a free call for you. And just another resource that we offer to the general public. Okay, so make sure you take advantage of that. With that said, let's start diving into some of the questions. We did have some people submit questions on Instagram earlier today, so I want to make sure I go through those first. Thank you guys for submitting the questions. First question was from Grant C. Jones. If I'm targeting middle market IB, does that hurt my chances of being accepted into your program? No, absolutely not, Grant. Like we have people that place into bulge bracket banks, elite boutique banks, middle market banks. We even have people that, place into regional boutique banks. Like obviously we're always going to try to get you into the best bank that we could possibly get you into, right? But everybody has a different profile, right? And also a lot of that actually is dictated by how soon or how late you come to us, right? Like someone who's coming to us as a freshman or maybe even sophomore, a lot of times that there's enough, it's early enough for us to do the work that's necessary to get you into a bulge bracket or elite boutique bank. But if you're coming to us a little bit later, like a junior or even a senior, or sometimes people even come to us after they graduate, like the later you come, typically like the harder it is to get into some of the bigger banks. You're going to have to go, a little bit more downstream, right? But like if your goal is a middle market bank, a lot of our clients just want to work for middle market banks, and that's totally fine too, right? Middle market banks are still very good places to work at. You're still going to work on very interesting deals. They're still very selective, right? Like a Jefferies, which is probably one of the best middle market banks in the world. They probably only accept 3% of their applicant pool, right? So it's still like very, very hard to get into. So I don't want people to think like, I think a lot of times there's this toxic mentality on places like Wall Street Oasis where they say like, oh, if you don't get into anything but like Goldman TMT, then you're a total failure. Like it's absolutely not true, right? So yeah, Grant, like if you want to work for a middle market bank, as long as your reason's well thought out, like we're just here to support you, accomplish whatever your goals are. Okay. Let me go to the next question. Attila 14S says, is it ever appropriate to request to move your interview time to later if you're on spring break? Attila, I mean, I wouldn't do it. Okay. Like sometimes you do have to move your interview time, but usually like you want a better reason than just like, oh, I'm on spring break. right? Like they know you're on spring break. It's spring break right now, but like they don't really care that you're on spring break. Like sometimes people have to move because like, oh, they have a final exam that's conflicting, or they have a midterm that's conflicting, and the professor won't budge, and like you don't want to fail your class. Like, okay, that's a legitimate reason, right? If you're like, oh, it's spring break, I'm going to Cancun to party. I mean, to be honest, like priorities, right? And also like the signal that you're giving this bank is like, okay, is this the type of person that's also going to, prioritize fun or prioritize vacation over their job in the future if we were to hire them? And that's just not like the message that you want to be giving, or that's not the signal that you want to be giving to these banks. So even if you're on spring break, like if you're not going to be there in person, like you can tell them that, hey, you're going to be out of town. Um, you have a trip that you had already planned. You can maybe ask them if you could do the interview, virtually, like over Zoom or something. But I don't know that I would actually like delay the interview. Okay. Um, Throne Bronson asks, do you help with Canadian banks as well? Yeah, absolutely. Like we have the majority of our students are in the US, but we do help our brothers up north. We do have Canadian students that we've worked with as well that have, gotten to banks like HSBC and BMO and TD Securities. And, it's a much smaller market up in Canada, but also like there's a lot fewer people who are actually trying to get into banking in Canada. So like we can absolutely help you still if your goal is to break into investment banking in Canada. All right. Um, so that's that. And then let's see, what's the next question? Josh K. Chu asks, what do you provide that cannot be provided by the school you go to? Yeah, Josh, this is a great question. And we get this question quite often. First of all, I don't know what school you go to, but it's okay. That also doesn't really matter. Like, I'll just answer this in like a general sense, right? I would say if you go to a target school, you probably have a lot more resources at your disposal than if you went to a non-target school, right? So if you go to a non-target school, in my experience, you're probably not going to have a whole lot of resources on campus. Like there's not a lot of students that are even trying to recruit for banking. Like you might be the only person that you know, or maybe you have you and a couple friends. And there's also not a lot of alumni that are able to help you, right? Because you don't have a lot of alumni from your school that have already graduated into banking. And so like in that case, like it's very obvious that what we provide is like obviously not available at your school, right? Like we basically um, would give you someone that you can ask questions to. The biggest thing is give you someone that can ask questions to anytime you have any questions about anything recruiting related. Almost kind of like what we're doing here, except like on a more one-on-one manner, and also like 24/7 or on demand, as opposed to like this live Q&A. Like I only have time to do it once a month, right? So that's like the biggest thing. If you go to a non-target school student, just like even knowing how to navigate through the recruiting process, knowing the ins and outs, and like having like information that typically like all the target school students would have because they're immersed in that environment, and so many people around them are going through the process, and so many upperclassmen have gone through the process, and so many alumni are already working in these fields. It helps you kind of like level the playing field against the students from these target schools that just have a competitive advantage that you don't have, right? If you do go to a target school, so like one thing that you guys need to know is if like we actually looked at all the top schools that in terms of like where students come from in Wall Street Mastermind, and like the number one school is Wharton and Penn. Okay. And then like the rest of the top 10 schools are places like Berkeley, Harvard, like Duke, NYU, Columbia. Like it's basically all the Ivies and top public schools like Michigan. Like, and so these are schools that send a lot of students into investment banking every year already, right? And it's like if the question is like, well, why are these people, still joining a program like Wall Street Mastermind? Well, a couple things, right? I would say whether you go to a target school or a non-target school, whatever your profile is, good GPA, bad GPA, lots of relevant experience, no relevant experience, each of you has a floor and a ceiling. Okay. Like in terms of like what a reasonable outcome is for you with recruiting, right? If you go to a better school, you have better grades, you have better resume, your floor and your ceiling is higher than if you like, go to a worse school and have worse grades and have a worse resume, then your floor and ceiling is lower. Regardless of what your floor and ceiling is, like our job here is to raise the floor and ceiling for you, right? So even for the students that go to Wharton, we'll go to Penn and go to these schools that have a ton of student orgs and clubs and things like that. Like, why do these students still join our program? Well, one, if you go to a school like that, like you also have a lot more competition. You're competing against all the other students at your school who are also trying to get the same jobs as you. They also have access to all the same school resources that you already have that are being provided at school, right? So at the end of the day, it's all relative. Like it's still competition. The question is like, what advantage do you have over everyone else that's already at your school? Like every single bank that comes to your school, even though you're a target school, they have a quota for how many people they're planning on hiring from your school, right? And so you're still going for a fixed and limited number of spots, and you're trying to make the cut into like being the top however many people that are actually going to get hired, right? And so like what we're providing is again like an unlimited, it's unlimited and on-demand support anytime you need with anything you need help with as far as recruiting goes. So it could be related to your applications, could be related to your networking, could be related to your behavioral interview prep, and it could be related to your technical interview prep. And usually it's like some or all of those things, right? Those are the four main areas that we work on. But furthermore, it's who you're going to be getting help from, right? Typically, if you're at school, the people that are helping you are typically probably going to be your upperclassmen buddies who have already gone through recruiting one time. Maybe they got a summer internship. Maybe they are waiting to go back for their full-time offer, right? And you should absolutely leverage that, right? You should leverage every resource you possibly have. The difference between, but there's like there's no conflict between, leveraging like the upperclassmen friends that you have and getting whatever advice you can from them. There's no conflict with that and getting help from Wall Street Mastermind as well, because the difference is like, your upperclassmen buddies, they've gone through the process once and they were successful, and that's great, right? But any advice that they're giving you is just based on their own experience of having gone through the process once, right? So that's the first difference. For us, we've helped over 800 students at this point. It's pretty soon it'll be over 900 students. And so we've just seen a lot more different scenarios. We've seen a lot of different problems and profiles, and like pretty much like whatever you think you're going to encounter, we've probably encountered it before, right? And so like that experience is hard to replace. And so the quality of the feedback that you're going to get is going to be a lot better, right? Also, like the coaches that are going to be coaching you inside of our program are people that have actually worked in banking and or private equity, and oftentimes both already, right? At some of the top investment banks in the world, some of the top private equity firms in the world. Some of them are like, I do this full time, but like all of our other assistant coaches, they're currently all still working in finance, right? So they've been working for multiple years. They've interviewed multiple students. They've been on the on-campus recruiting team. And so they just know a lot more than say like a summer intern or someone who's going to like, be coming incoming for full time, right? So if you're looking for help, like the first thing is like, how experienced is the person, right? How knowledgeable are they actually, right? And then the second thing is like, how invested are they in your outcome? Like how much are they actually going to help you? Those of you that have tried to get help from upperclassmen, like you probably know, like you can bug your upperclassmen like every now and then here and there, but like they already got their job. And yeah, they're your friend. They like you. They wish you well. But are they going to sit down with you and spend, 5, 10, 15, 20 hours like answering your questions or like tutoring you, like coaching you on everything you need to know? Like they have a life, right? Like they're trying to enjoy the rest of their time in college. They're just not going to, go to so much trouble to help you get a job. Ultimately, like most of the work is still on you, right? For us, this is our job. Like we get paid to do this. This is how we provide for our families. And so like, we're just going to be a lot more invested, right? And also like, if you don't get a job, it doesn't affect your upperclassmen buddies at all. Who cares? Like it's your job. It's not there. They already got theirs. If you don't get a job, it actually does affect us, right? Because we offer things like a money back guarantee, because we offer things like I mentioned earlier, income share. Like if we don't get you a job, in a lot of instances, we don't actually even get paid. Right. And not only do we not get paid, like I'm actually personally losing money as the owner of this business because I got to pay my team no matter what. If we have to refund you or if we don't make money from you, like I'm just paying for everything out of my own pockets. Right. So who do you think is going to care more when it comes to whether you're successful or not? We are, right? Because we have way more skin in the game. So if you're looking for help, if you have someone that's way more experienced and they're going to care a lot more about actually getting you the job to the point where they're going to like always be there for you when you need it. They're going to answer your questions in a timely manner. They're going to give you like really, really detailed answers and coaching to all of your questions and problems. Like the level of help that you're going to be receiving is just significantly better than whatever you'd be able to get from school. Right. So ultimately, like that's the difference. Right. And so believe it or not, like a lot of the people from like these top schools that actually join our programs, like a lot of times they're actually like the presidents of like the feeder clubs at school. Like um, they don't necessarily tell people that they're in our program, to be honest, because maybe they don't want people to know. But like we've worked with multiple students like that. Like they're some of the most qualified candidates, and they're still getting the help because their mentality, the mentality for people like that, is not just like, oh, like what's the bare minimum I have to do to like get into banking? They're not worried about just getting in. Like they know that getting into banking is like just the bare minimum. They're not worried about getting in. They want to get into not just banking, but they want to get into the best banks. They want to get into Goldman TMT. They want to go straight to the buy side. They want to go to KKR. They want to go to Blackstone. They want to go, TPG. They want to go inside. Like, and so like that's the difference. Is like, what's your mentality? Is it like, hey, I have a floor and ceiling? Are you just trying to like clear the floor? Or are you saying like, how can I get as close to my ceiling as possible? And not only that, can I raise both my floor and my ceiling? So maybe what used to be my ceiling is now my floor, right? And so that's kind of how I would answer that question. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on this. I really want to like, make sure I answer actual questions that you guys have. But since you asked, I want to make sure I give you a good answer. All right. Andrew Capellian says, what is the best way to get a coffee chat if the person does not answer their LinkedIn? First of all, Andrew, I would not recommend reaching out to people for coffee chats on LinkedIn. I would recommend reaching out to people for coffee chats through email. The reason being, bankers check their emails like many times per day. It's like part of their job to like be very responsive on email and make sure that they don't miss any emails from their clients or they don't miss any emails from their bosses. Now, you're not a client, you're not a boss, but still, that's where the attention is, right? I know a lot of bankers that don't check LinkedIn regularly or like don't check LinkedIn at all, right? And so like that's just not where their attention is. So you're going to get just a much lower response rate. So yeah, I think like just fundamentally the premise of the question is off. I would not be reaching out to LinkedIn. I would be reaching out to them by sending them emails to their work email. Okay, not their personal email, but to their work email. So hopefully that makes sense. All right, let me come over to some of these other questions that we're getting. So let's see here. Philip Tran asks, if someone gets, what does it say? If someone gets, oh, sorry, your question is overlaid with the logo, so I'm having trouble reading it. Oh, okay, here we go. If someone gets rejected from a bank or a PE shop, is it worth reapplying for the same group in the future? I guess depending on the context. I'm assuming you're saying that you got rejected for a summer internship, and then you're asking if you should reapply there for full time. I mean, if that's the case, then yeah, absolutely. Like there are a lot of people that try to get in during the summer internship recruiting and they don't get in, and they keep working on themselves and keep turning themselves into a better candidate, and they come back and they recruit for full time and end up getting in the second time, right? So like, I mean, even myself, like, I did my full time at Deutsche Bank, but when I recruited for the summer, I didn't get into Deutsche Bank, right? I got into Bear Stearns, which ended up being horrible because they went under and I didn't have a full-time offer to go back to. But like when I re-recruited for full-time, I ended up getting into Deutsche Bank, right? And then also even after Deutsche Bank, I ended up going to Morgan Stanley after my first year in their technology investment banking group. And same thing, when I recruited for the summer internship, and even later when I recruited for a full-time during senior year, I didn't get an offer from Morgan Stanley, right? But then I ended up getting in as a lateral, right? After my first year, and I ended up spending my second and third year there. So yeah, you can absolutely apply for the same place more than once. Like if anything, you apply for a place more than once, like they remember you, it shows that you're really serious about working for them. And the biggest thing is like, did you improve yourself as a candidate since the last time they talked to you? Like, why didn't you get in the first time? And do you know why you didn't get in? And have you gone and worked on those things and have you improved? Right? If you have, then you should absolutely apply again, right? So hopefully that makes sense. Let me go to the next question. Patricio Rodriguez Zambrano says, if I graduate in June 2024, should I still apply summer internships? Yeah, absolutely. Like the easiest way to get into investment banking is to do a summer internship and convert that to a full-time offer. And even if the place that you do the summer internship at doesn't give you a full-time offer to come back, like you need that summer internship experience to be competitive to recruit for a full-time offer at a different bank. So if you're graduating in June 2024, the really, really important summer internship for you is going to be summer 2023, which is going to be this summer. Okay. So you're going to have to make sure that you have something lined up for this summer, which really is only 2 or 3 months away, right? So it's really coming down to the wire. You want to make sure that you try to get that internship ASAP if you haven't secured one yet. Okay, so yeah, I will absolutely still do that. Ruhan Desai asks, has JPM had super days for non-diversity IB? JPMorgan has definitely had super days. We've had a couple of clients that have gotten offers from the JPMorgan super days. One of them was female, so I think she might have been a diversity candidate. But the other person that got a JPMorgan offer was actually male, and he was actually Asian. So I'm pretty sure he wasn't diversity. So yeah, I want to say like they definitely have super days for non-diversity, but it also doesn't mean that they're not going to have more super days, right? Like most of these firms are on a rolling basis. And so like for a big bank like JPMorgan, like their summer intern class could be upwards of 100 plus people, right? So it's very, very unlikely that they're going to hire all 100 plus people in just like one super day or even 2 super days, right? And it's like sometimes they'll do multiple rounds. So you should like, you know, if you haven't gotten a super day yet and you're wondering if they're still recruiting, like the only way to really figure out if they're still recruiting is through networking. So you got to go talk to people that work there to see like if they can tell you where they're still in the process, right? And as long as they're still recruiting, then you still have a shot. Okay. So let me come back over to Instagram. I think we have some questions on here as well. See if I can find them. Has JPM started super days for IB? Yeah, I kind of just answered this question, but yeah, they have started. They have absolutely started. So JPMorgan is one of the first firms we've seen that have started giving out offers. Piper Sandler has also been giving out offers. SVB has also been giving out offers. Those are like a few off the top of my head. There's also like private equity firms that have been giving out offers like Ares. So these are like some of the places that some of our sophomore students have already started getting offers from. Let's see here. Can you answer, tell me about yourself? I mean, I don't know your story, Riley. So like, it really depends on like this answer is going to be different for every single person, right? But typically I can tell like the framework for how I would recommend answering this question. Typically, it'll be a 1-sentence intro, quick intro on like just the basic facts, like the high level facts of your profile. So like, you know, my name is what, currently, you know, studying XYZ major at ABC school, right? So that's like one quick sentence. And then usually we like to start with like what we call like a unique personal identifier. So like you want to give them something that's going to help them remember you, right? Because they're going to be interviewing. Usually if you're interviewing with them, like they're going to be talking to so many candidates that day. A lot of times like everyone blurs together because like everybody sounds the same, especially if your answers don't stand out. You sound just like everyone else. And then at the end of the day, when they're discussing who they want to give offers to, if they can't remember you or they can't remember your name, then you're most likely not getting an offer, right? So you want to give them something unique that they can associate with you. So, oh, that's the guy that, I don't know, started a business when he was, when he was growing up, right? That's the guy that started his own startup, even though it failed. That's the guy that, almost became a professional baseball player, but then he got injured or whatever. So it's like whatever, right? Like something that's unique about you, but not just unique, but also like ideally you're able to demonstrate some sort of quality or something that you learned, either a quality that you developed or something that you learned through that thing, right? So for example, going with like the professional baseball player example, like maybe you were trying to become a professional baseball player and then you got injured, but like through that experience, you really learned how to become a team player, right? And also you learned to have a really, really great work ethic because it's really hard to become a pro baseball player, right? Like, so like work ethic and teamwork maybe are like the two traits that you want to highlight from that, right? And those are also traits that they really like to see in investment banking. And so it's very additive to who you are as a person or who you are as a candidate, right? So a unique identifier, you're not spending a lot of time on this. This is like also same thing, just like probably 1 or 2 sentences on this. So far we're like 2 or 3 sentences into your answer, right? And then you usually want to spend most of the answer talking about like what you've done since you've gotten to college. Okay. And most of the stuff before college, like it's not that interesting and it's not that relevant, right? So you might talk about like, why you chose to go to the school that you went to. But also like all the relevant experiences that you've accumulated since going to college, right? Maybe you participated in certain extracurricular activities, or you joined certain student organizations that are, that's relevant for banking. Maybe it's a student-run investment fund, right? Maybe it's a finance club. Maybe it's a investment banking workshop, whatever, right? Maybe it's like internships that you've done, right? Throughout your freshman or sophomore, or whatever you've done to date, right? You want to talk about, you don't have to hit on every single thing you've done, and you don't even have to talk about every single thing on your resume. You only talk about the stuff that's relevant, and you do it in a chronological order. And the important thing, and a lot of people don't do this, is you got to give the explanation on like why you did those things. Like, why did you do this first thing? And then after you did that first thing, why did you decide to go from that to the second thing that you did? And then why did you decide to go from that to the third thing that you did? So like, how did you go from point A to point B to point C? Like, what they're looking for is not just like you to itemize all the things that's already listed on your resume. They have your resume. They can see what you've done. They don't need you to just read your resume to them. That's a mistake that a lot of people make. What they want to know is the stuff that's not on the resume, right? They want to understand the rationale behind your decisions. Is it logical, right? Do I understand why you made the decisions that you made? And do I agree with your rationale? And then also like, have you been progressing as a candidate? Meaning like each thing that you've done along the way should have gotten you closer and closer to banking, right? You should become a more and more qualified candidate after each of those experiences. And then the end of your answer is like, and then that kind of brings you to where you are today, which is, you're sitting here in front of them, talking to them about this opportunity and why you're excited about this opportunity, right? So that's usually like a high level framework for how I would talk about, tell me about yourself. But again, the specifics in between, I'm giving you the framework of how to think. I'm not telling you exactly what to say because, again, it's different for everyone. That's kind of the tricky part about behaviorals. But like the specifics of what you talk about will depend on what you've actually done and what experiences you have, right? So hopefully that makes sense, Bradley. It's a good question. It's one of the most important questions that you have to learn how to answer well. If you don't, like, that's usually the first question that you get asked in any interview. And if you can't answer that question well, you're going to have a very tough time passing that interview. Like that's the first impression that people have, that your interviewer is going to have of you, right? And like if they have a good first impression, everything from there on out is going to be a lot easier. If they don't have a good first impression for you, then you're kind of like having to dig yourself out of a hole, and then it's kind of an uphill battle from there, right? Okay, so let's keep going. Let's see what other questions we have here. How did you get started, man? I assume you mean like how did I get started in investment banking? I mean, so for those of you that don't know my story, I graduated in 2008. So then I did my summer internship in summer 2007, and that internship, like I ended up working at Bear Stearns in their technology investment banking group, and that was like the worst timing and worst luck because summer 2027 was basically like the last summer of Bear Stearns' existence. Like that was the summer when Bear Stearns' 2 hedge funds collapsed because they were trading a bunch of like mortgage-backed securities. And that was like the first domino to fall that triggered the 2008 financial crisis, right? And so none of us, like we had 3 interns in my class in the San Francisco office. None of us got return offers to go back. And then like what's worse was like at the time, Bear Stearns technically still existed. Like it didn't go under yet, but they just like were starting to go under, right? And then so I had to go back and recruit for full-time, go through the full-time recruiting process to try to break into banking while also explaining why I didn't get a return offer from my summer internship. That like invites a lot of questions around like, okay, like were you like a crappy intern? Like, why didn't you get a return offer, right? It's like the premise is if your own firm wouldn't even bring you back for full-time, like why should we hire you, right? And so full-time recruiting was extremely difficult for me. And also the market was really, really bad back then. It was like worse than even what it is today because that was like 2007, 2008, right? So I probably got rejected by, I don't know, over 20 plus different firms. Like Elite Boutiques didn't exist back then, but I interviewed with pretty much like every single bulge bracket bank and every single middle market bank. Everyone gave me interviews because I had bare students on my resume, so that part was easy. But it was passing the interviews that was tough. And also, I just wasn't a very good interviewer back then, which is kind of ironic because I teach people how to interview now, right? But regardless, I ended up after like all those rejections, I was down to like my last two interviews that I had left, and then like one was with Deutsche Bank and one was with Jefferies, both with their technology investment banking group. And I remember I had those two super days on the exact same day. So I had like the Deutsche Bank super day in the morning for like 5 hours or something, and I had to walk down the street to the Jefferies office, and I had like another 5 hours of interviews in the afternoon. And I basically interviewed for like the entire day that day. That was probably like the most tiring day of interviews I've ever had. My backs were against the wall because, again, like I said, those were my last two interviews that I had. And then before, like, lo and behold, like those are the only two offers that I got for full time. And so it's like, I guess sometimes you have to wait till your back's against the wall before you like perform at your best. But also, I think, to be honest, like, is the fact that I just never gave up. Because like a lot of people, if you get rejected by 5 firms, 10 firms, 15 firms, like at that point you start to believe that, hey, maybe it's not meant to be. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe like, I'm not cut out for this. And a lot of people give up, right? And sometimes you're 3 feet away from gold. For me, like my personality is like, I'm the type of person that just doesn't give up. If I set my mind on something, I won't give up until I achieve that goal, right? And so I never gave up. I'm glad I didn't give up, even though there were certain times when I felt a lot of doubt and uncertainty about like whether I can actually do it, but I just kept going, right? And eventually I got in, and then the rest is history, right? And now when I think back on it, and I think like part of the reason why I decided to start Wall Street Mastermind was because that process was so tough for me. That was like probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life, at least certainly up until that point, right? I think I've done some other stuff since then that have been pretty hard as well, but like that was so tough for me, especially as a college student. Like having invested like the first 3 years of my college career to the singular goal of getting into investment banking, only to feel like I was like this close to not getting it. I was like on the cusp of not making it in. Like that was really stressful, really tough. And I'm so glad that I got in because it changed my life, right? Like being able to start my career at a place like Deutsche Bank and then eventually Morgan Stanley, like that set me up for all the success that I had after that, for going into private equity, for working at some of the top tech companies in the world, right? Like I worked at Square, which is now called Block. I worked at GitHub. Both of those have phenomenal exits. And I would not have been able to accomplish those things, nor would I have been able to like have the know-how and the capital to start my own business, which I run today, which is Wall Street Mastermind. I wouldn't have been able to do any of these things if I didn't have the foundation that I got from starting my career in banking. And that's why now, like, I find a lot of fulfillment in helping other younger students who are trying to do the same thing, because I know how hard it can be. If anything, recruiting has only gotten harder over the years. The competition is way better now than it was back when I was recruiting, right? And so like the recruiting process is way more competitive. Like if we had a resource like Wall Street Mastermind back then, like I would have jumped all over it. We did not have anything like this before. You guys have so many more resources now that are available to you, but so does your competition. And because of that, it raised the level that you have to kind of like be able to play the game at, right? And so, but nonetheless, like I know how rewarding it can be to be able to start your career in banking, which is why I do what I do now, right? Like it gives me, nothing gives me more satisfaction than like when we get our clients an offer and then like they tell us like, oh my God, thank you guys so much. Like this is life changing. Like, thank you so much. Like, you got me like my dream job, right? And we know this is something that's going to affect them, not just right when they graduate, but like for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, basically for the rest of their career, and not just affect them, but affect their own family, their spouse, their kids, right? And so like your career is a big deal, right? So that's kind of why we do what we do. So I kind of went on a tangent there, but thanks for asking me on my past, I guess. Take a trip down memory lane. How did you get interested in recruiting, and what drives you to continue with this? Okay, I guess I kind of just inadvertently answered that. So I'm going to skip that question and go to the next one. Thanks for asking. That was a great question. Abraham V41 asks, best tips for someone at a target school. I mean, look, if you're at a target school, right, I would say like you're probably in a super competitive environment, right? Everyone's trying to break into banking. Again, it's kind of just what I said earlier. Like you need to figure out like, what is your competitive advantage over your peers? What's going to set you apart from everyone else who's also going to a great school, who also has really good grades, who also has a super stacked resume, who also has like, all the alumni connections that they could possibly want? Like, what's really going to set you apart, right? Like, Don't get me wrong. Like if anything, it's definitely easier for you to get in from a target school than it would be for like someone coming from a non-target school. So like, in a way, like you're privileged to be at a target school, right? But like aside from that, I was like, if you've already gotten this far, you already gotten into a target school, like you're winning in life, right? Like you worked hard all your life up to this point, probably throughout high school, to be able to get into that target school. But don't stop there, right? Like you're knocking on the door of like having the level of success that most people can only dream of. And then so now it's like, ask yourself, what else can I do to maximize my potential? What else can I do to like hit my ceiling? Right? Don't just clear the floor, hit my ceiling. I know I've said that multiple times today. I don't want to sound repetitive, but really, like, I don't think sometimes young people don't understand just how big of a difference it can be if you just start a career at like a slightly better place. Right? Like if you're if you get into like a top 50 bank versus a top 30 bank, there's a difference. If you're in a top 30 bank versus a top 20 bank, top 20 banks versus top 10 bank, top 10 banks versus top 5 bank, or maybe you're starting out straight on the buy side, like there's levels to this game. And, I see some of my peers that, I went to Berkeley, which I consider to be a target school too. And a lot of my, classmates are really successful as well. But like back when we were in college, everyone kind of seems like pretty close together, right? In terms of like the level that we're at, like, oh, we all go to Berkeley. Oh, we all have pretty good grades. Oh, we all have pretty good resumes, whatever. It's like, you don't really see that separation too much. And then like the first time you start to see separation is kind of like where people get their first job after college, right? But not even after that, but like your first job after college then affects your exit opportunities, right? Like, the people that started, my classmates that started at Goldman TMT or, started at MS Tech right out of the gate versus someone like me who started at Deutsche Bank, like a lot of them were able to recruit directly into like a mega fund like TPG or KKR or Blackstone or some of these top firms. Whereas like, when I recruited for private equity, like I went to GI Partners, which is like still a very good fund, but it's more of a middle market fund, right? And from there, like the opportunities that those guys had after PE was better than the opportunities that I had after PE. And then so like that gap starts to widen over time. And what you learn is that like the cream really does rise to the the cream really does rise to the top. And people start to separate themselves from the pack over time. And so that's why I was telling people like your career trajectory, like maybe it's like this right now, or your expected career trajectory is this. What we're trying to do is like, how do you make that steeper, right? If you can make the slope of your trajectory steeper, then that's where like, where you end up, the gap becomes wider over time. 10 years into your career, 20 years into your career, 30 years into your career, that gap typically only widens, it doesn't narrow, right? And then so like your starting point is extremely important. That would be like probably like the thing that I would, tell everyone to think about, regardless of whether you go to target school or non-target school, but like try to get yourself off on like the best foot possible for your career, because it has long-term ramifications for the next several decades of your life. And a little bit extra work now and a little bit extra competitive advantage now, like it can go a long ways. It can make it can make a huge difference, right? Small hinges open big doors. I think that's the saying or something. Anyway, something along those lines, right? So hopefully that makes sense. Just don't settle, basically. Okay. I study. Let's see, Champagne Shorebot. I study at LIU Brooklyn. I'm pursuing finance and focus on investment banking. What advice would you give me to get to Wall Street? Yeah, so LIU Brooklyn is not really a target school, but the good news is you're right there in New York. So it's very close to like where all the bankers are, right? And so like the biggest thing for someone who's trying to break in from a non-target school is like you got to network. Like networking is going to be your way in the door. If you don't network, like no one's going to be looking at you. No one's going to proactively come and try to hire you. Like you don't go to Harvard, you don't go to Wharton, you don't go to, Michigan Ross, you don't go to Columbia, you don't go to one of those schools, right? You have to be just as good, if not better, than the students that go to those schools in other aspects. Like, sure, your school might not be as good, but like, do you have the relevant experience? Did you keep your grades up, right? Like, are you good at interviewing? Are you good at networking? Like, you have to be a networking machine. to be able to talk to someone for 30 minutes and win them over in such a short amount of time. Like, one, build a strong enough rapport to get them to like you as a person, to want to help you, but two, to impress them enough, to the point where they say like, hey, yeah, this person belongs. This person, like, even though, he or she doesn't go to a Harvard or Columbia or Wharton or one of these schools, like, they're just as good, if not better, than all these other kids, right? Also, the other thing is, like, if you go to a non-target school, most would perceive that as a weakness, but there are ways you can like spin that into a strength, right? For example, you have more of a chip on your shoulder. It makes you hungrier. You have to work harder to even get to where you are today, right? Like, all those things can work in your favor if you know how to position yourself, right? If you know how to like weave that into your story, if you know how to like turn those perceived weaknesses into actual strengths, right? And so, that's kind of like the advice I would give to you. And hopefully that's helpful. All right. Paul Merson asks, is Michigan Ross consider a target school for PE or IB? Yeah, Michigan Ross is absolutely a target school. It's one of the top target schools out there. So if you go to Michigan Ross, like, your school is not going to be the reason why you don't get in, right? It doesn't mean you are guaranteed to get in, because no matter what target school you get to, there's still more people that try to get in and fail than people who actually get in. Just statistically, it's that competitive. So even if you go to a target school, you cannot rest on your laurels. You cannot just assume like, oh, I go to a target school, so like I'm all good, right? You still got to work your butt off, and you still got to outcompete everyone else that goes to the same target school as you do, right? Like, that's your primary competition. But yeah, it's absolutely a target school. So you have nothing to worry about there. Okay. Have you heard of Piper Sandler? Yeah, absolutely. Piper Sandler is like one of the top middle market banks out there, right? And we've had probably like 3 or 4 students inside of Wall Street Mastermind alone that has already gotten a summer 2024 offer from Piper Sandler. So yeah, they're one of the first middle market banks to start giving out offers. I would say Jefferies is probably the top middle market bank out there, but Piper Sandler and Houlihan Lokey are probably the other two that I would put in the top 3. So it's a very good bank. They had like a career exploration day or something. It's like diversity program, I guess. We put this in our story today, but for those of you guys who didn't see it, I think they had like 600 something applicants for the event, and they only selected maybe like 66 or 67 people to actually attend. So about 1 in 10 people got chosen to attend. And out of the 66 or 67 people, we had like 6 people from Wall Street Mastermind that got selected, which is like 10% of the people, 9 or 10% of the people that got chosen to go to the event were from Wall Street Mastermind, right? And like, statistically, that's pretty insane, because the number of students in Wall Street Mastermind probably only makes up like, I don't know, maybe 0.1% of the overall applicant pool for investment banking, if that, right? So that's kind of like what I mean when I say like raise your floor and raise your ceiling. Like, ultimately, at the end of the day, what we're doing is like massively increasing your probability of success, right? A lot of people are like, oh, why don't I just do this on my own? Well, yeah, you can. If you do it on your own, like, the chances of you getting selected for these events, for diversity programs, for internships, for interviews, for whatever, is much lower than if you had our help, right? That would be the reason. But yeah, if you have a more specific question about Piper Sandler, Ryan, feel free to ask. But yeah, I've absolutely heard of them. The Antardas asks, how much do you charge? Yeah, it's a great question. So like, honestly, there's a lot of factors that affect like how much you charge. Like, we don't take a one size fits all approach to the students that we work with. Like, that's the beauty of this program, is that like we don't just have everyone come in and like teach everyone the exact same things. We'll work on the exact same things for every single person, right? Like, a lot of it depends on like your profile, how, like, what do you need help with? How much help do you actually need? Like, there's a whole bunch of things, like even your budget, right? Like, even when we talk about like, having things like income shares and things like that, like how much of income share we charge, like a lot of times that comes down to like all the things I just talked about, plus like how much you can even afford to pay right now. Because like the whole point of income share is designed to help people that want to work with us, but like affordability is the only thing that's stopping them, right? So like there's too many variables for me to be able to like just give you one price. Like, what we're not doing is having you come in and like sending you the same set of videos that everybody else is also watching, and then like just calling it a day, or like having you come in and giving you like a static PDF file and saying, hey, go memorize these 400 questions, and then calling it a day. Like, if that's all we were doing, yeah, super easy. I can tell like exactly how much it's going to cost. Everybody pay the same thing. That's not how it works, right? So we have to talk to each person, learn about your specific situation, understand what it is that you need us to do for you, and then based on that, we can give you a more precise quote. Okay. Um, but again, we're doing everything we can to make it so that this is affordable for everyone, so that it's not out of reach. So like that's why again, like we have something like the income share where you don't even have to pay us unless you start making money in banking. You don't have to pay us until way down the road when you start collecting those paychecks, right? By then you're making 150 to 200K plus right out of college. Like you will be able to afford our program for sure. Like it's going to be, it's going to be insignificant relative to the amount of money that you're making. Like money is going to be the least of your concerns if we can get you into investment banking. Okay. Um, Rahul says UNCL. I'm not sure if that's in response to something I said earlier, Rahul, but I don't really have the context. So let me go to the next one. See if there are other questions. Any advice? Colby Meyer asks, any advice for a student doing a commercial lending internship at a bank? Yeah, I mean, like if you're doing commercial lending, like, it's still finance, but it's not really like the most relevant thing you can be doing for banking, right? Like it's probably closer to like corporate banking, and then corporate banking is somewhere relevant to investment banking, but like you're almost kind of like 2 degrees removed, right? And so like it depends on um how old you are and like how much time you still have left in school, right? And like where you're at in the recruiting timeline. Like if you still have a lot of time, I would try to leverage your commercial lending internship into like getting an even more relevant internship that would get you closer to banking, right? And so like a more relevant internship would like the most relevant internships you can do obviously are like what I call like transactional finance, right? So if you can work in things like investment banking, if you can work in like private equity, if you can even work in like corporate development, which just means like, you're doing M&A, which is mergers and acquisitions, but you're doing it in-house for an actual company as opposed to like advising them as like a third party outside advisor, which is what investment bankers are. If you can do like something like, in the transaction finance realm where you're doing deals, you're buying and selling companies, where you're helping a company raise capital through equity or debt, then that's like the most relevant thing you can do, right? If you can't get something like that, then I would say like the next most relevant type of experience that you can get would be something where you have to like analyze individual companies. And when I say analyze, I mean like analyze them financially, and like usually involves like valuing the business, right? Performing valuation on specific companies, right? So it could be like a hedge fund, a small family office, any type of investing role where you're trying to like pick individual stocks. And so you have to figure out if their stock price is overvalued or undervalued. It could be a valuation firm where a lot of valuation firms, like what they do day in and day out is like figure out the valuation of business. How much is the business worth, right? So it could be something like that. It could be equity research, where you're writing research reports on a specific company and opining on like what their stock price should be worth. Um, so it could be like any of those things, right? So either again, transactional finance would be the best thing possible. If not, then like something that's valuation related, or like you could probably honestly like go straight from commercial lending into corporate banking, or if not corporate banking, like maybe even get into investment banking, but it might be more on like some of the debt related groups, like debt capital markets, right? Or maybe left fin. I don't know. But like, again, that's just one internship. Like there's a lot of other factors. It depends on what else you have on your resume. It's like your GPA, your school, your interviewing skills, how good you are at networking. So there's a lot of things there. But that's like, that's my advice, is like try to leverage that into something more relevant, right? Butterfly asks, how much does this cost? I kind of just talked about that right before this question, so I don't want to keep repeating. Hopefully you heard my answer for that. If not, you guys can go back and watch a recording for this. What are your tips for lateral recruiting from, say, a bank like Mizuho to a BB? So yeah, if you are trying to lateral from Mizuho to a BB, depending on what you mean by lateral, like if you're talking about like, from summer to full time, or you're saying like you're already full time at Mizuho and you're trying to go to BB, I'm assuming it's a ladder where you're already currently working full time at Mizuho and you're trying to go to a BB. So if you're trying to lateral to a bulge bracket bank, typically, like you got to understand, banks only hire laterals usually doing one or two situations. One is if somebody quit and they have to backfill them. Although nowadays, like if the market's bad and people are already banks are already laying people off, sometimes if people quit, they might not even decide to backfill them, right? So in a bad market environment, it's definitely harder to lateral, right? The other scenario where banks typically hire laterals is like if they underhired for a period of time, and then like let's say like back when I graduated around 2007, 2008, that was a perfect example because like financial crisis, banks cut back on hiring, they hire less people. Then a year later in 2009, stock market rebounded, things were recovering, deal flow came back, and all the firms found themselves to be, understaffed, and then they start needing more people, and then that's when they hire laterals, right? So for you, if you're currently working as a full-time at Mizuho and your hope is to lateral, I would say like, hopefully we'll see. Nobody knows the timing of this, but like, even though the market has kind of been trending down right now, like the expectation is that at some point it's going to come back. Hopefully at some point within like the next year or so, next 1 to 2 years, right? When that does happen and that rebound happens, a lot of firms are going to be looking to hire laterals, right? Because they're understaffed. So you got to make sure that you're ready for when that time comes. Ready as in like from both an interview standpoint, and lateral interviews are harder, like because you've already been working in banking, and so like you're gonna have to like be able to talk about the deals that you worked on and know them like really, really well inside out, right? The other thing is like with lateraling, the last thing I'll say about this is like a lot of times these opportunities don't get posted. So like the Morgan Stanley opportunity that I lateral to from Deutsche Bank, that job was not posted, right? I knew someone who was working at Morgan Stanley at the time who was an analyst. He went to school with me. We weren't super close, but he was an acquaintance. The staffer basically just asked him like, hey, we're looking for 2 laterals. Do you guys know anyone who would be a good candidate? Like your friends at other banks and stuff. And he knew I was at Deutsche Bank. So he just came and asked me, like, hey, are you interested? And I said, yeah, I'm interested. And then from there, like from the time he reached out to asking me to then like me having like a phone interview, like very shortly after that with a staffer, to then me coming in for a super day over the weekend to me getting an offer, like everything happened within like a week. Right. And then like, so like if you didn't hear about the opportunity and you blink, like the opportunity got filled, like just like that. And then like you're never gonna hear about it. Like it's not posted on LinkedIn, it's not posted on Glassdoor, it's not posted on like the Morgan Stanley website. Like they don't even need to post it because it's not that hard for them to fill those spots, right? Just go poach someone good from like a slightly, lower ranked bank is usually what they do. So like, all that's to say, like a lot of it is gonna come down to your network. The stronger network you have, the more people you know at more places, and the more you're like on their radar, like the more likely it is that you're actually going to hear about these opportunities, right? Some opportunities do get posted. That's the low hanging fruit. You gotta make sure that like, you're constantly scouring these career pages and whatnot. And if there is a lateral opportunity, make sure you apply. But like that's low hanging fruit. And usually those opportunities are also going to be a lot more competitive because everyone knows about them and everyone's applying, right? So networking is going to be a huge thing. Make sure you're doing that. So that you can hear about opportunities that are kind of like off market, so to speak. Okay. NA asks on YouTube, did Aries offers come out? Yeah, Aries did give out some offers. Like we have students in Wall Street Management that have gotten offers from their private equity group or special, like PE, special ops. Like, there's multiple groups that are recruiting, right? And so they did give out some offers. I don't know if that means that they're completely done or if they've given out all their offers, but they have at least given out some offers. And it's been a couple weeks, in fact. Like that didn't like just happen. Do you know? Let's see. What is this question? Do you know any IB firms recruiting for its 2024 summer associate internships as of now? No, not yet, because for summer associate 2024 summer associate, that means you're not going to start your MBA until the fall of 2023. So you haven't started yet, right? So usually recruiting for summer associate positions won't happen until like the first semester of your MBA program. So like once you get to school in the fall, that's kind of when all the recruiting starts happening. Like you have to go to like a lot of recruiting events, start like applying, start networking, start interviewing, and then like everything's wrapped up before your first semester ends. So everything like happens very quickly. If that's what you're planning on doing, I would start prepping now. I would not wait until you get on campus to start like prepping because that's what most of your competition is going to be doing. I would start, recruiting now. And then like also, I'm just going off of your picture, but like you look like you will qualify for diversity. So like a lot of like the MBA diversity programs actually will even happen before you start your first year. So like between now and the fall, a lot of these diversity programs are actually happening. So you want to make sure that you stay on top of that and take advantage of those programs. That's going to give you a much easier way to get into these positions. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me come back. There's another question here. This is from, I'm currently in middle school, 7th grade honors class. Oh God, you're super early, man. Any tips on how I prepare to recruit for investment banking internships in 2030? I'm having reading the vault guys so far. Man, you are probably the youngest person that has ever asked me a question about investment banking recruiting. So, first of all, I just want to give you props for starting so early, but also, dude, you're so young. I would encourage you to like really do more exploration on like what it is that you really want to do. I don't think anyone should be deciding in 7th grade that they want to do investment banking, right? I'm not saying you can't do investment banking, but I'm just saying like there's still a lot that you don't know, and like your preferences might still change. Like I think in 7th grade, I thought I wanted to play like in the NBA, like which is like obviously super far fetched. Like there's only one Jeremy Lin, right? But like I just after that I wanted to be a lawyer. Then after that I wanted to be like something else. And then like after that, I found out about banking. So like, your preferences might still change multiple times before you even get to college, right? Like what I tell everyone, like even people in high school, what I tell them is like, look, if you're in high school right now and you want to get into investment banking, like nothing you do right now really matters as far as recruiting goes. The only thing that really matters is like how good of a college can you get into? Work your butt off and do whatever it takes to get into the best colleges possible. That means getting good grades in high school. That means doing well in your SATs. That means like writing good personal statements. That means like, participating in extracurricular activities, like make yourself an interesting applicant, right? And like the better the school you get into, the easier time you're going to have getting into banking. And like, that's the biggest lever that you have to pull this early on. Aside from that, like everything else you can worry about once you get into college, right? So hope that helps. But dude, like my advice to you is like, obviously, hey, I think investment banking is a great career, right? I'm biased, don't get me wrong, but you're super young, dude. So like go out and explore, learn more about yourself. And then like come back to banking. If you ultimately still decide like this is what you want to do, like great. But then at least you've like, done your due diligence on all the other options out there as well. Okay. Byron Yip asks, is it possible to move from city corporate banking to buy side in the future? I will be doing full time with city corporate banking, but want to go back to the buy side in the future. I have strong modeling skills and industry experience with buy sides. I mean, so like if by buy side you're talking about like private equity or hedge funds or something like that, like personally, I haven't really. I'm not saying it's impossible. I don't really believe that anything's impossible, right? But I've never personally seen it, and I've worked with a lot of students, so it's very, very unlikely. Like buy-side firms just don't recruit from corporate banking, right? They recruit from investment banking. So if you want to go to the buy side, I would try to like lateral over to investment banking, which is definitely doable from corporate banking. Like we've had people in corporate banking come to us and work with us, and then we help them lateral to banking, to investment banking, right? I would lateral to investment banking as soon as you can, right? The less time you stay in corporate banking, the better. And then from there, you can try to recruit for the buy side, right? That's personally what I would do. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. All right. NA asks, did Centerview, New York, start non-diversity? I don't think so. We had someone that just did a interview with Centerview, New York, within the last couple days, and but he's definitely a diversity candidate. So my assumption is that they're doing the interviews now for the diversity candidates, but they're not going to be interviewing for non-diversity until after they're done with diversity. So that's kind of where I think they're at. Okay. So that's that one. Let me see if there are any other questions. Let me come on Instagram real quick. Truffle olives for me. Any advice for someone doing a career change from corporate marketing leadership to IB? Yeah, I mean, usually if you're making that big of a switch from corporate banking, not corporate banking, from corporate marketing to investment banking, in my experience, you're going to have to go back and get an MBA because you're a career switcher. Like if you're working in finance already, even if it's not IB, like you're working corporate banking or something else that's a bit more tangential to IB and you want to like make the switch directly into IB, I have seen that. But like for someone who's like in marketing or in sales or in engineering or like something completely different, usually that's what business school is for like career switchers, right? So you should try to get into like ideally a top 10, but minimum top 20 business school. And just know that like at the MBA level, when they recruit, investment banks don't recruit, at least the reputable investment banks. I'm talking like, bulge bracket elite boutique banks and even the reputable middle market banks, they don't really recruit from non-target schools. It's not like undergrads where you can go to a non-target school and start recruiting to these banks. At the associate level, at the MBA level, they're pretty strict about only hiring from target school. So like getting into one of the top programs is going to be like the first step. And then like, even if you get into a top MBA program from there, I think the statistic is like, this is the stat that I saw is like about 40% of the people who try to apply for investment banking from a top MBA program end up getting in. 40% is like a lot higher than like anything at the undergrad level, but still only 40% is less than half. And about like 15% of the applicants end up getting like their top choice bank, right? And so like, those are the odds. I would say like an MBA obviously is a huge investment. It's very expensive. You're gonna spend over $200K to go and get that MBA, and also like 2 years of your life, and you won't be working for those 2 years. So there's like the opportunity cost of foregone salary. So if you're gonna go that route, just to get into banking, you need to one, be very, very sure that banking is what you want to do, and then two, I would say like come and talk to us, see if we can help you, like maximize your chances of like not walking away without an offer, right? Make sure you're part of the 40% and not the other 60%, right? In fact, it would be best if you make sure you're one of the 15% that actually gets one of your top firms, right? Hopefully that helps. Are Northwestern and U Chicago considered target schools? Yes, absolutely. They're both target schools, especially for Chicago, especially for the Chicago office. But even for New York, like I would say, those are both considered target schools. Hey, I missed it if you answered, but have you heard of Piper Sandler? Yeah, Ryan, I have heard of Piper Sandler. It's one of the top middle market banks out there. It's a great bank. Let's see what else. Moria Yanuga says, I go to IU and was wondering how much harder / easier it would be to recruit for SF banks. I mean, like IU is not really like a target school for the SF office, right? So like in that sense, like I don't think it's any harder or easier than if you went to any other non-target school, right? Like you're definitely gonna have to like network your way in. But IU is a great school. Like, I mean, well, also like I know there's a big difference if like you're in the investment banking workshop and if you're not in an investment banking workshop, right? But like if you're in an investment banking workshop, obviously I think like they have much better placement than if you're not in an investment banking workshop, right? So a lot of students that we work with from IU, they come to us because they couldn't get into the investment banking workshop, and then so like we kind of replace IBW for them and give them a lot of the guys that they would have gotten, right? But also the other things like I don't know, we talked to IU student recently who I think maybe even is in the workshop, but he was saying that like they're primarily placing the middle market banks, and they haven't like the last time they placed someone into an elite boutique was like 3 years ago, right? And so like that's the other thing is like depending on like how high you're aiming, are you trying to get in a bulge bracket and elite boutique banks, or are you just like happy with a middle market bank, right? Those are all factors that you have to consider. Okay. Have you worked with anyone from Suffolk University? I don't know. If we have, it's probably I don't know off the top of my head because we worked with like over 800 students. Some schools I know for sure we have worked with people from there. If we have worked with people from Suffolk, it's probably really only like 1 or 2 people. But it's possible that we haven't. But we have worked with a lot of non-target students, and we have also worked with students that come from schools that like are total non-target schools. Like we got someone an offer from a school called like Your Sinus College, which I had never heard of prior to working with them, right? And there are like several other schools where our students go to that. Like I know, like we had a student that went to I guess it's a Christian school. It's called like Cornerstone University. He was like one of the first people from the school ever to begin investment banking. So like we don't really care where you go to school, to be honest. Like for us, that's like one of the least important factors. I mean, it matters, but like that's almost never going to be the reason why someone can't get into banking. I think you can get into banking from almost any school as long as you have the right approach. Okay, let's go to the next question. Would you recommend asking for an extension on an exploding offer? And if so, how would you go about it? Yeah, I did a YouTube video about this recently, but I would say like typically I'm not a fan of asking for extensions because you know, one, like it tells them that they're not your top choice. Two, like, you know, if you end up having to go back there anyway, then now like, your future bosses know that wasn't your top choice. But also like it depends, right? Like a lot of times you just don't have a lot of leverage. Like the biggest thing is just like there's a risk that if they know that you want an extension, they might just give your offer to someone else. Right. And so like, is that a risk that's worth taking? I think if you really want to ask for an extension, what I've seen some people do is like if you go to a target school, like if your school is a target school for that firm, and like say you got the offer through like on-campus recruiting, a lot of target schools have policies where the firms cannot give exploding offers to their students. And so like you can talk to your career center and see if they have a policy like that. And if they do, a lot of times they'll have your back and they'll even talk to the firm and say, hey, you got to give our students enough time to finish their recruiting process, or else like you'll lose your on-campus recruiting privileges, right? Like if you have something like that, then that actually gives you some leverage. Otherwise, like if not, like typically I'm not a fan of, kind of asking for extensions. Okay. So you could consider potentially accepting the offer and continue to recruit and then reneging if you get a better offer. Like that is an option. Like not everyone's comfortable doing that, but that is definitely an option, right? And in my opinion, the less risky option. Okay. A grad student, international, corp dev at a F500 company, or a risk position at GS for summer internship. Corp dev at a F500 company for sure, because corp dev, at least you're doing M&A, and that's way more relevant than being a back office position, even if it's at Goldman Sachs. Once you go back office, a lot of people ask you questions like, oh, what if I like, start a back office or mid office and I try to like network my way into the front office? Like a lot of people try that. I've almost never seen it work. And part of the reason I think is because like once the front office bankers see that you're back office or mid office, like it's really, really hard to shed that label. And like bankers are kind of elitist and snooty. I hate to say it, but like if they think that you're back office material or mid office material, then you're not front office material. And like it's almost like you're not one of us and we're not going to hire you. Right. So I would definitely go corp dev. Is NYU target but non-Stern arts and sciences econ? Yeah, we worked with both students from Stern and non-Stern, and I would say like Stern is definitely a target. If you're non-Stern, I would say you're probably like a semi-target, right? I wouldn't go as far as non-target, but I would say you're a semi-target. Definitely not as favorable as being at Stern, but like it's still NYU and you're still in New York, and still like it's better than most of the non-target schools, I would say. Mail 34468. Can you still get strong offers, top 10 banks / buy side, if you have slightly lower than a 3.7 at a target school and are diversity? How would you approach this? Yeah, absolutely you can. We've seen so many students in Wall Street Mastermind that are diversity at a target school or sometimes even non-target schools, and they don't have a 3.7 and they get in a great bank. Like in terms of how would you approach this? I mean, like the same way I would approach any other, like doesn't matter if you're diversity, non-diversity, like there's really only 4 things that are going to affect your chances of getting in, right? Making your resume as strong as possible, right? That includes your GPA, but your GPA is only one of many factors. Like the bigger thing I would say is like how strong of a resume do you have? Like how much relevant experience do you have, right? That's the most important thing. Networking, really, really important. And then like your interview prep, like behavioral and technical interviews. And then like, if you're a diversity candidate, if you're still underclassmen, freshman, sophomore, like definitely try to take advantage of the diversity programs that are out there. A lot of them recruit even earlier. So like, don't fall asleep at the wheel. Like a lot of them have already finished recruiting for diversity. Some of them are still ongoing. The ones that are still ongoing, definitely make sure you jump on those. It's a lot easier to get into the diversity programs than to get into like the regular channels. Okay. So make sure you don't miss out on that. Right. Other than that, let me see if there are any other questions. Okay, on LinkedIn, we have, on YouTube, we did have a few more questions come in. So Byron said, but it's a grad program in city. corporate banking with a 2-year rotation will be very difficult to lateral to IB. It'll probably be difficult to lateral within city, but I'm saying you should lateral like outside of city. You should try to lateral to a different bank. I don't think that would be hard, right? So that's what I would do if I were you. Okay. It is what it is. Says, out of curiosity, is a chief operating office IB summer analyst internship better than no internship when trying to break an IB? Yeah, I mean, for sure it's better than no internship. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, nothing is worse than no internship. You should not ever have no internship during the summer if you want a full-time offer. Because then you have to answer the question like, well, what were you doing over the summer? And it's going to be very hard for you to come up with like a legitimate good answer, right? It's like, oh, I was just messing around, right? Like, so you definitely want to be doing something. Okay. Let's see here. Are Vanderbilt, Rice University, and Notre Dame MBA programs target for P or IB? Yeah, I think so. I haven't looked at like the MBA rankings lately, but like, dude, what you can do is every MBA program has like an employment report that they publish every single year. So go on their website or just Google Vanderbilt MBA employment report, Rice University MBA employment report, Notre Dame MBA employment report. It'll be like a PDF file on their website or whatever. Download it. It tells you literally what percentage of their class, what percentage of the most recent graduating class ended up getting offers in every single industry. And a lot of times investment banking will be broken out specifically because if enough people from their school are actually going into banking, it'll be broken out. So you want to see like how many people from their school, from their class, what percentage of the class actually got into banking. And that'll give you an indication for how likely it is that you can get into banking from that school. So that's the best way to determine like, do banks actually recruit from the school? And they'll usually also include a list of all the companies that have recruited at the school. So you can see like, what are the investment banks that are actually on there? Okay. What are some of the courses you recommend taking at the MBA level to get ready for IB quantitatively? I mean, it's like all the accounting and finance courses, right? But to be honest, like again, recruiting happens during your very first semester. So like what classes you take for the most part is not going to help you during your recruiting process. Like that's not going to be the thing that gets you in or don't get you in. Like everything you need to know for the interviews, you have to learn on your own outside of school, either prior to you getting on campus or like as soon as you get on campus, you're going to have to like self-study and learn all the technicals that you need to know, right? So again, if you need help with that, like we can help you with that even before you start. Like you can almost think of us as just like a summer school class that you're taking before you even start your MBA. That's what I would recommend. Okay. Let's come back to Instagram. We got more questions here. And guys, we're like over by about 17 minutes. So I'm going to try to answer these last few questions and I got to hop. Gotta go hang out with my kids before I put them down for bed. So, do top banks give a bit more leeway on sub 3.7 GPA if you go to a target school? Yeah, absolutely. You definitely have more leeway if you go have a sub 3.7 GPA from a target school than a non-target school. If you go to a non-target school, like your GPA becomes even more important, right? Because you need to show that you didn't go to a non-target school because you weren't a good student. Like a lot of people go to non-target schools because they were a good student in high school, but maybe they couldn't afford to pay to go to a target school because usually target schools are a lot more expensive, right? But yeah, like you do have a little bit more leeway, but dude, honestly, like, I don't know, like based on your line of questioning, like what I'm gleaning is that your GPA is below 3.7. If that's the case, like, look, it is what it is, right? You should try to raise it, but in the near term, that's going to change overnight. I don't know how low it is, but like as long as it's not like too low, like if you're like you said sub 3.7, so I'm assuming it's like I don't know somewhere in the 3.4 to 3.6 range. Like you can absolutely still get into banking. Like that type of GPA is not going to help you, but it's also not like so low that's going to disqualify you, right? If you start getting into low threes, it becomes a bit harder. But like we've gotten people into banking with GPAs as low as 3.0. So like a sub 3.7 GPA alone is not the reason why you can't get into banking. Okay. Any advice for recruiting for a high school student going to NYU this fall? Yeah, man. If you're a senior and you're about to go to NYU this fall, the biggest thing that I would be doing right now is, talking to the students that are already going to NYU and doing your due diligence and figuring out the lay of the land, figuring out like what are the clubs that are on campus that are worth joining, especially the ones that are relevant to banking, relevant to finance. Every school has like feeder clubs. Some better than others, right? And that's typically based on like where they typically place their students into. Like, where are their alumni getting offers from, right? Like at NYU, I know like one of the hardest clubs to get into is finance society, right? I think they only take like 7 or 8 people per semester out of like 200 plus applicants. So it's extremely selective. But like, one of our students in Wall Street National, like we helped him prep and, he got into finance society. And like, basically if you get into finance society, you're like a guaranteed lock to get into like an elite boutique or bulge bracket bank, like a very, very top tier one. So like this guy in particular, he ended up going to an elite boutique, right? And so like, if that's something you want to do, like usually like recruiting for that like happens as soon as you step foot on campus, usually first semester freshman year. So like if you want to start prepping now, right, start like the way they screen you is like all the same things that investment banks look for. They look at your resume, you have to network with people in the club, they put you through behavioral interviews, they put you through technical interviews. So like a lot of students, like the guy that I'm thinking about at NYU that got into finance society, he also joined us right around where you are. Like he was like already accepted at NYU, but about to start freshman year, but hasn't officially started yet. And then we started working with him. And then by the time he got to NYU, he was like just so far ahead of everyone else in terms of preparation, like everyone else in his class at least, which is what ultimately made him like the top, 3 or 4% of the applicants that actually got into that club, right? So like that's honestly like the biggest thing you can do at this point in the process is like make sure you know what clubs you want to go for, because you're not going to be able to go for everything. So figure out which ones are worth going for and then start doing the prep work to try to get into the most selective, most prestigious clubs on campus. That's the best thing you can do. Okay. Do top banks give a bit more leeway for sub? Yeah, I would just answer this question. Or are abs resumes automatically screened for GPA and you can maybe not get high reviews? Nope. You're fine. You can definitely still get high reviews, especially if you network the right way. So 3.3 student athlete at our target. First round interview tomorrow. Need help. Hey, Matt. So if your interviews tomorrow, it's going to be pretty tough to do a whole lot because it's already like that's in less than 24 hours, right? If you want to work with us, like we definitely help you for like whatever other process you have coming up. But like as far as tomorrow goes, like I can just only give you some quick advice here, which is make sure you have really, really good answers for what we call the guarantee questions. Tell me about yourself. We're walking through your resume. Why investment banking? Why this firm? Those 3 questions like almost guaranteed. And usually the first questions that get asked, and you have to knock those out of the park. Okay. If your interviews tomorrow, like obviously I would say like you should and know every experience on your resume, be able to speak to them intelligently, be able to ask in-depth follow-up questions about every single thing you put on your resume. Okay. If it's on your resume, it's fair game. That's the other piece of advice. And then like, obviously, ideally you would know your technicals too. But if you don't know your technicals by now, like you're probably not going to know a whole lot of your technicals by tomorrow. So like, there's not much you can do there. Just like kind of fingers crossed, hope for the best. Hopefully tomorrow's mostly behavioral. But yeah, man, like try to avoid waiting until it's like so last minute to start prepping and start getting help, right? Like for all of you, like start getting help as soon as you can so that if and when the opportunity does arrive, you're ready for the moment, right? These interview opportunities are super precious. You do not want to like, mess up or like basically waste the opportunity because you didn't start prepping early enough, right? All right, let's keep going. Blah, blah, blah. I know technicals. Don't you fret. Okay, great. You know technicals. So you're solid then. No, make sure your behaviors are good, right? And then like best of luck, dude. Hope it works out. Like, okay. So I think that's pretty much it. We cleared through all the questions. We've been on here for an hour and 24 minutes. So hopefully you guys found this helpful. Again, for those of you that want more help, if you want to work with us, we have a money back guarantee. If you don't get a job, you get a full refund. We also have income share options where, if you feel like you can't afford it right now because you don't have money because you're a college student, you can pay us only after we get you the job and only after you start making money, only after you start collecting your IB paycheck. So like affordability should never be an excuse anymore for someone who wants to work with us but can't work with us, right? So if you guys want more of where this came from, if you guys, want the type of experience and knowledge that we have, you want the help with the network, our community, all of our alumni, as well as other students that are currently going through this process. And you want that information edge, right? Like we have a lot of information that we just source from our community that usually would not have otherwise. We have an entire interview database with thousands of actual questions from all the top firms, right? People submit new questions every single day. Just they go to an interview, they come back, they submit the questions. Like everyone's doing that, right? And so like stuff like that, like if you want that type of competitive advantage, then like, come and talk to us. Like you can book a call. First step, www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The streets abbreviated to ST. So wallstmastermind.com/apply. And you can actually talk to, what will happen is you'll book a free virtual coffee chat. You'll talk to like one of the upperclassmen that's already gone through our program and already recruited successfully into a top bank. You talk to them about their experience, ask them how it was, ask them how recruiting went, ask them any questions you want, get any advice you want. And then after that conversation, if you still want to work with us, then they can set you up for a call with our team. And then like, obviously, our program is by application only. We can't give everyone money back guarantees. We can offer everyone income shares. We only want to work with the people that we're very, very confident that we can get help, get offers for. And so like, if we can't help you, don't worry about like us trying to get you to work with us regardless. Like we're not even going to do that. Like that's like the fastest way to us, like to me losing a ton of money, right? So like, we're only going to invite you in a program if we're absolutely confident based on the situation that you lay out for us, what you need help with, how much help you need, what your goals are, how much time you have left, based on all the facts that you give us. If we feel confident that based on our expertise and our experience that we can get you a job, then we'll invite you in the program. And if we can't get you a job, we'll tell you very honestly why we don't think we can. And we'll just give you some advice on what we think you should do instead, or what we would do if we were in your shoes. Okay. So either way, our goal, if you come and talk to us, is for us to give you as much value as possible, regardless of whether we end up working together or not. Okay. And like, and so, yeah, go and book that call. We also have a free course on our website for those of you that want to check it out. You can try the free course. It's about 7 hours worth of free content. So, you can go and sign up for that. No strings attached. You don't even need to enter your credit card or anything. Like you're not going to get charged. Okay. That's just like for you to see what we're about, for you to kind of see some of our trainings, get a little, preview, teaser, so to speak. It's nothing like what we offer in the program. It's like not even comparable, especially in terms of like the level of support. There is no support for the free course, but it does still like kind of at least give you a sense for like how we teach and stuff like that. So I think it's like, just another free gift that we're offering you guys. So, Matt says, yo, I'm gonna DM you. Yeah, for sure, man. Just DM me and, we can talk to you, or someone on my team can talk to you, if you DM us, and, we can speak more about your situation. All right. So that's what you guys can do. You can book a call, or if you don't want to book a call, you just want to talk to us, feel free to DM either us on Instagram. The handle is at Wall Street Mastermind. So you'll find us pretty easily, or you can also message me on LinkedIn. My profile is just LinkedIn/IN/Sam Shaw. Right. So anyway, that'll be it for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. We've been on for almost an hour and a half. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. We'll be back with another of these live Q&A around the same time next month. And until then, hopefully we get to speak to you. If we don't get to speak to you, best of luck to all of you out there who are recruiting. And, let's go get these jobs. All right.